Let's start with BYU and Notre Dame. I think I've heard this like 15 times this week because Notre Dame's below BYU. When you look at the box score, this is not in South Bend. All right, this is in Las Vegas. I've seen people saying, well, BYU on the road. Well, on the road, kind of, but it's a neutral site, all right? So just be careful when evaluating that. It's like, oh, man, well, Notre Dame at home, 3.5 points. Like, oh, God, I got to take the Irish. They're not at home, all right? They're in Vegas, all right? So be careful with that. Look, Notre Dame started 0-2. There's no denying that they didn't look great in the first couple weeks of the season, but the last couple games looked pretty good. Drew Pine's starting to settle in a little bit at quarterback. We know that he replaced Tyler Buckner, and it'll be up to Pine to kind of get this offense going against a good, solid BYU defense. Now, their offense has not necessarily been great, but they did show signs of life against North Carolina a couple weeks ago. Now, BYU's 72nd in rushing, somewhat gettable on the ground. However, if you look at their defense, they gave up kind of a bunch of yards to Laga last week, the Utah State quarterback who was thrust into the lineup. Is that an indicator of poor defense, or is that an indicator of the fact that they weren't really prepared for Laga to be the guy? I'm not sure. We're going to find out. I do think that Audric Estime is a guy that you can lean on if you're Notre Dame. He seemed to break through a little bit against North Carolina. They had 576 yards of total offense. They had 287 yards on the ground. So I do feel like this Notre Dame rushing attack can run the football with enough efficiency to be able to keep a potent BYU offense on the sideline. If you look at this offense, man, for BYU, Jaron Hall's phenomenal. He threw for 274 and 3 touchdowns. He's now thrown for nearly 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns with just 1 interception on the season. He's going to be going up against, however, one of the better secondaries in the country. This is a really good group in the back end for Notre Dame. When you look at what Notre Dame has been, yes, they're struggling at times offensively, but I do think defensively they can do enough to make life difficult for the BYU Cougars. Look at BYU's defense, like we talked about a second ago. They're 41st in total yards allowed, and they're 18th against the pass, but they've really struggled. They're 92nd against the run, and Utah State just came off a 200-yard performance. Oregon also north of 200 yards. Could be an issue here when you look at Notre Dame with how they're starting to come along on the offensive side. I think they're going to lean on running the football. I think they'll take the ball out of Drew Pine's hand, and they're going to run it as often as they can until BYU could stop it, because that does one of two things. One, it wears out BYU's defense. Two, it keeps Jaron Hall and that potent offense off the field. I like Notre Dame in this game. It's not in South Bend, remember. It's a neutral site, but I like the Irish to get it done. I think they have superior personnel.